and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Now to the zenith, 上方世界, right? The above directions. We have talked about the pure voice Buddha last time. Now and also talked about celestial King Buddha, and we will now talk about an incense fragrance Buddha. Incense fragrant Buddha represents Tan Zen Buddhism. Usually, fragrance or incense represents Zen. So today we will talk about the purpose of Buddhist meditation. What is the purpose of practicing Buddhist meditation? This is from Shankarasita's book, and he wrote a poem. I'll read it for you. It sounds really pleasant. Here, perpetual incense burns. Incense, right? 香, 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 incense burns. The heart to meditation turns, and all delights and passions spurns. 1,000 brilliant hues arise, more lovely than the evening skies, and pictures paint before our eyes. All the spirit's storms and stress is stilled into a nothingness, and healing powers descend and bless. Refreshed, we rise and turn again to mingle with the whir of pain, as on roses falls the rain. All right, that's a little poem from Shankarasita. So meditation, what is meditation? So let's do a pop quiz here. So what is meditation? Is it making the mind a blank? Making the mind empty? Is it sitting and doing nothing? Or is it going into some kind of a trance? Or sitting quietly and thinking about things? Or self-induced hypnotic state? Or all of above? What do you think meditation is? Is it all above or one of those? Well, before we answer it, let's go into the lecture and you will find out. Right, just a pop quiz. Here, Shankarasita calls it meditation proper or 正定, 真人. And this is to differentiate between Buddhist meditation and other forms of meditation. Because meditation is a very general word in English, and it doesn't really represent the meaning of Buddhist meditation. So here we're trying to differentiate Buddhist meditations and other religions' meditations because they do practice meditation. So here we call it a right meditation or meditation proper, right? The word meditation is often misused because it is so broad, but here in Buddhist texts, from Buddhist perspective, generally it refers to the three successive higher levels of spiritual experience, 三界, right? 色界 and 无色界, the meditative meditation in form and formlessness, right? Sak and sakya, both sak. So that's what meditation in Buddhism means. It corresponds to the higher levels of spiritual experience. So meditation is, in a sense, is a concentration of the mind away from withdrawing ourselves from the external world, no longer seeing anything, no longer hearing anything, and in some cases you don't feel the cushion just sitting on. And attention is withdrawn from the senses. In other words, you're concentrating your energies, drawn together into one point, 一心, one point. So that's one aspect of it. It's not a complete picture, but that's one aspect of it, the starting point of meditation. The next, of course, that's meditation in general. And then next comes what we call meditation proper, where attention has been withdrawn from the senses. There is concentration of energy, but at the same time, it leads to the rise of energies. So it doesn't come stagnate, but it rises above to the next level. And then it elevates one's inner experience. and you can call it super consciousness, or where you have transformed your consciousness. And as one becomes more and more concentrated, one becomes more at ease, 禅悦, right? You become more peaceful, blissful, and even the mental activity fades away. All 妄想防得, all the thinking fades away, and you begin to see the inner vision or hear the inner hearing. And these stages of superconsciousness are known to Buddhism as Jannah state, 禅. All right, Jannah is a Indian word that Buddhism, that Chinese derives from. 禅那, 挺那, or Jannah. Okay. So meditation proper is not just unifications of energies, but it leads to a higher levels of consciousness and level of being, right? And in a sense, you're living in a different world. You're becoming a different person because you're transforming yourself into another, a higher level of person. And finally, there is also called, it leads to contemplation. So the first up here, when we talk about here is 修止, 止静的止, 止等. Down here, that is just the first part. The next part where meditation leads you to is contemplation, 修观, or 读观. Turning this unified, elevated state of being that we have concentrated our energies and our attention towards the directions of unconditioned. One sees it or begins to move towards it and is gravitated towards it, and one begins to even come in contact with the depths and the height of existence and being and consciousness. So essentially, when we practice meditation, we are changing our intrinsic nature. We start to change our consciousness inside, and therefore, in a sense, we see things very differently, and we are transforming ourselves into a different person, essentially. So what is meditation? What is it really? Well, there's a lot of, in order to understand what it is, maybe it helps to understand what it is not. So therefore, it helps to understand what is the misunderstanding of Buddha, of meditation. There are many misunderstandings. Some people say that meditation is a means to make a mind blank or mind empty, or just sitting there doing nothing. One scholar, very well known, she was back then, she translated Indian scriptures into English, Buddhist scriptures, but she did not understand the meaning of meditation. She thought that the monks back then who meditated were just to pass time because they had nothing else to do. Okay, so that's wrong understanding of meditation. Sitting there doing nothing, so this is not meditation, right? We're just sitting there doing nothing. That's not meditation. And going on some kind of a trance where you just absorb and you don't know anything about on the outside. That's not what meditation is. Or you quietly thinking about things, thinking about something. You're focusing, you're concentrating on something. It does not mean that's meditation. Or self-induced hypnotic state where you hypnotize yourself to do something, to think about something, to focus on something, right? So this is a widespread of misunderstanding of Buddhist meditation, because Buddhist meditation is not any of those things. When we use meditation, it's so general that it does not do justice in terms of describing the essence of what the proper word, what it actually means. So in English, we don't have a proper word to describe what meditation is. We don't have a way to describe exactly the state and the process that a meditator goes through. So essentially, to understand what meditation is, you have to practice You cannot read books and understand and have the experience of meditation. You have to practice it. You have to put into practice. You can't just read books and say you understand meditation. Right? In other words, you really have to experience it. So to reach an understanding of the true nature and the purpose of meditation, we should keep in mind of the gaps, the difference, why we're meditating and what we're trying to achieve. And one of is that to bridge the gap between ourselves and enlightenment, to bridge the gap of being a mundane being and to become an enlightened person like the Buddha. So there is the gap that we're trying to bridge. In Buddhism, or whatever you call it, whatever that helps you to close that gap between the ideal and the real, transforming an enlightened person into an enlightened person into enlightened person, that is Buddhism, right? 转凡成圣, right? 举法坦盘. When you transform that into something higher towards enlightenment, that is Buddhism. This transformation involves tremendous change, and perhaps you can call this is the greatest human development. And this is what we call spiritual life, and it leads to the higher evolution. So what does actually change? What does it change when we practice meditation? What is it that changes in us? Well, it's more than the physical body. The primary change is really in our consciousness, the mind. And that's the difference between the higher evolutions and lower evolution. The transformation is not just in the mind, but also in the body as well. Here, he says that it's not the body, but in a way it is also the body, because when you are at peace and when you're meditative, you're calm, you're generous, it shows on your physical appearance, right? You look calmer, you look at ease, you look friendly, you're more inviting, you're more generous, you look more peaceful, right? So it does change your physical appearance as well, and the energies around you. So here it says that there is a difference between lower evolutions and higher evolution. Lower evolution corresponds to the biological process. For example, if we go through our the physical evolution is something that's passive and we don't have to do anything much. It goes on automatically. But in order to achieve a higher level evolution, we have to be conscious about it, and it is an active and conscious process. In other words, you really have to put in the efforts to achieve a higher level of evolution. So there are mainly two ways. One is indirect method, and the other one is direct method in transforming our consciousness. One is indirect method is by being in environment, by changing our environment to something very peaceful, like you go on a retreat, like 佛七, you go on a retreat and you chant mindful Amida for 7 days. You feel very at ease. You are already changing. In fact, when you return to work, your co-workers they say, "Wow, you look so refreshed," or "You look so at ease. You look like you're glowing." So you are changing. Just 7 days of 佛七, 7 days of retreat. You are changing your intrinsic nature. Right? So that's one way. That's one way of changing our consciousness. And another way is the right livelihood, 正命, Jannah. Right livelihood, having a meaningful career that brings benefits to others. So, for example, the kind of work that we do day after day, right, week after week, and year after year, for 20, 30 years, until you reach the age of retirement, it can have a tremendous impact on your consciousness, your mind. Unfortunately, if we were in a unhealthy work environment, it could be very detrimental to our state of mind. So right livelihood is strongly encouraged. Right? It's a means of earning our living in a way that does not lower our state of consciousness, or at least prevent us from raising it and doing no harm to ourselves and to others. So having a good career, not doing harm to ourselves and others, but to bring benefits to others, is very conducive to the higher development of the consciousness. So simply by changing our work, changing our environment, changing what we do, day in, day out, can have a very positive impact on our consciousness. Right? Another way is to have a regular, disciplined life. Right? Leading a regular and disciplined life, becoming less and less, this is, of course, it's becoming less and less popular because everybody likes excitement. But if we can observe like moral concepts, 持戒, 止耶, we observe the moral concepts and principles, maintain regular meals, regular work, like right livelihood. We study and we just live a normal life, fasting sometimes to help, that can help, and observing silence. This is called monastic life, right? When we live like a monk, essentially. But that kind of life is very peaceful, very less stress, and as long as we put in the efforts to do our work, and we try to contribute, and we live a normal life, it is very helpful to the development of our consciousness. Another thing that we can do to help the mind is to exercise the body and the mind, like yoga. Right? Hatha yoga is a form of yoga, focusing on the breathing, right? Body and mind. And there are classes that teach you how to practice yoga. Either the class could be 45 minutes to an hour and a half of breathing, different poses and meditation methods. So when we exercise, or even running too, can help the body. When the body is healthy, it is very easy to sit in meditation. And it's very easy to have strong state of mind too, even if you're not sitting in meditation, but your body is healthy, you can absorb more stress. It helps you to think clearly because your body is healthy, your physical body is healthy, and therefore your mind can benefit from it. The effect of exercising, yoga and such can be almost as refreshing as meditating itself. Or another way is enjoy great works of art, right? Poetry, music, painting. When you go to a museum, very peaceful. You look at the beautiful paintings, or the gardens, beautiful flowers, can help to raise the level of consciousness. And another way is merit cultivation, 修福, right? 杜福. So on a more practical level, simply helping other people, helping the sick, the destitute, the poor, right, the homeless, even the mentally disturbed. When we go down, we help people. We do these things without any personal selfish motive. Right? We're helping them because we want to alleviate their suffering, not because we want to earn merit. This, of course, it can be helpful to the development. When we help people, when we contribute, we are raising our value. And when we have value in society, it makes us feel part of society and makes us feel valuable. And that helps us to maintain our calmness. So this is also another direct means of raising our state of consciousness. Another way is spiritual community. By being part of a spiritual community, people who are spiritually minded like us, and even better is to be around those who are spiritually advanced than ourselves, can help us to raise our level of consciousness. And in some cases, this is the most important of all the indirect methods. In Indian religious and spiritual literature, it is called Satsang. Right? Sat means true, real, or authentic, or spiritual. And Sang means association or communion, fellowship. like santuan, right? Tăng đoàn. So satsang here means getting together. There is a Buddhist term called kalyana mitrata, meaning that invited friend. Friends are always there for you. So when we are surrounded by those who care, those who are spiritually minded, those who are more advanced than us, they can help us to elevate our state of consciousness. Another way that we can raise our consciousness is by part of the Dhamma Assembly, Fa Hui, Pháp Hội, such as chanting and rituals, right? Rituals is sometimes looked down upon today because intellect people think that is kind of superstitious. But this time-honored method can raise a level of consciousness. For example, we may have our own Dhamma assembly at home. By, for example, in your meditation hall, meditation room, on the Buddhist table with Buddha statue, you can offer flowers, you can light candles, incense, and that helps to calm the body, the mind down. And you may read books about it, you may even try to meditate, but sometimes it is more meaningful in terms of impact, just to be part of the Dhamma Assembly. For example, like the act of repentance in front of the Buddha, Canhui, Samhoi. By performing repentance in front of the Buddha, it can bring immediate calm to the mind, and sometimes more so than trying to meditate to try to calm the mind. So being part of the Dhamma Assembly, performing rituals can sometimes have a more immediate impact to the mind. Okay. So what other methods do you think? Can you think of? Okay. There are many other methods that can help with indirectly changing our consciousness. I'm sure you may be able to think of other methods. Well, one other method that comes to mind is like at work, your co-workers, right? So practicing meditation is not just going to a meditation hall or into your meditation room and just sit there all day, but you can change your consciousness indirectly, even at work. When you encounter your co-workers, difficult co-workers, it helps to remind us to be mindful and to practice meditation by not acting emotionally, but to observe things objectively before taking action. So in the face of difficult co-workers, we practice mindfulness by not losing our control, not losing our emotions. When we apply mindfulness correctly, we won't find ourselves blaming other people or blaming ourselves or saying that things are unfair, right? Of course, this assumes that the environment is suitable for our development. If it's not suitable, then we should find something better, suitable. How do we know whether it's suitable or not? How do you know that you should move on from your current job into something else? Well, I have a couple of guidelines that I'll share with you. One guideline is 3 things that you should evaluate. If the salary is good, if you have supportive co-workers, if it's a learning environment, then it's a good place to be. So even if you have 2 out of 3, it's still not bad, right? If the money is good, you have supportive co-worker, and if there's learning, it's a learning environment where you can grow, that's even better, right? And that you should definitely stay, even though the work may be difficult and the work may be challenges emotionally. Another guideline is you can ask yourself 3 questions. Have I learned everything I need in my current positions, right? You sign up, you apply for the job, you receive the offer. Now you're working in your positions. Before you decide to move on, you should ask yourself, have you learned everything you need from this position. The second question is, have I proved myself that I can deliver? Because when we take on a task to work on a project, have we proved to our co-workers, our boss, that we can deliver a product, that we can, whatever it is that you have signed up to do, make schedule, make the project successful. That's what I mean deliver. Can you perform? Have you seized the opportunity to perform, right? That's the second question. The third question is there still growth in that position? If there is still growth in that position, then of course you should stay on, even though it may be very challenging, very difficult, even difficult bosses that you have to deal with, difficult co-workers. But if you think that there is still something that you can still learn from your position, you may want to stay. And if you have not proved that you can deliver, then you should stay to take advantage of the opportunity to exercise your ability, your skills to deliver. Because by going to another position, there's no guarantee that you have the same opportunity, and there's no guarantee that you can perform to your abilities. So while you're in the position, you should seize the opportunity to perform, to deliver. And as long as there's growth, you should definitely stay to learn and to grow, right? So there are a few things that we can do to impact our consciousness, to raise our consciousness, not only in the main hall, Phổ Thang, Phật đường, or your chanting hall, meditation room inside, but also outside too, that we can learn how to practice meditation, right? So meditation should not be interpreted so narrowly that it is just about sitting, but it's about raising our level of consciousness, and that can be done indirectly or directly. That how do we work on directly impacting the mind? That's next. Okay. So again, meditation is very general, but in Buddhism, there are essentially three ways in practicing meditation. One is concentration, two is absorption, and three is insight, 智慧, trí tuệ. Okay, so this generally that's the three steps, if you will, in Buddhist meditation. So the first stage is concentration. Concentration has two characteristics. One is to focus on our attention, and the second is to unify our energy. The one is you focus your physical senses, and the other is to concentrate, to unify your mental energy. And in concentration, there's two ways. One is horizontal and vertical integration, and we'll go into that in a little bit. First is horizontal integration of the consciousness. What does this mean? It means that you are integrating your energy, you're unifying your energy on the same level of consciousness. We have subconsciousness deep down, and then we have the consciousness that we can see. The deep consciousness or the subconsciousness, 潜意识, right? The 胆thức. That subconscious we cannot see, and it's you can think of it as vertical. And so that's vertical integration. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But horizontal is across on the same level. Horizontal integration corresponds to what we generally call mindfulness or recollection. And here recollection is a good term because it collects our energy. Recollects our energy. As opposed to being scattered, our energy is scattered. Our personalities are being scattered. Right? Sometimes we have desires, unhealthy desires. Sometimes we have healthy desires. Sometimes we want to go in a certain way, and other times we want to go in a different way. Sometimes we are dutiful. Sometimes we are disobedient. So we have different personalities, and those personalities we can observe because they're on the same level of consciousness. until we come to the recognition of our personality, there is no integration. Right? Until we understand who we are, there is no integration. Because who are you really? You are different personalities popping in and out throughout the day. So who are you? So until we bring all those personalities, all the energies into one channel, it is very difficult to recognize who we are. So mindfulness or recollection is of three kinds. There are three kinds. The first is mindfulness of the body in its movement. When you walk around, when you move your hands, you are mindful of your bodily movement. Whatever that your body is doing, you are mindful. You are fully alert. You're composed and aware. So in this way, you don't find yourself acting erratically, just bursting out in anger. You don't find yourself doing that. But you are very aware and well controlled of your bodily movements. Second is mindfulness of feelings and emotions, things that go on in the mind. So the physical body you can see, right? You can see your arm moving. You can see your body moving or walking down the street. That you can see. But emotions, you have to pay a little more attention to recognize the emotion. So the second level requires a little bit of effort. We have to put in really the effort in order to recognize the feelings and emotions. Because sometimes people get angry and they don't even know it. That means they have lost their mindfulness, right? When we do that, we get angry or we get excited and we don't know. We just follow and react emotionally. Then we are not recognizing our emotions, our feelings. Therefore, we have lost our awareness. So whether there's a change of mood, happy or sad, we know exactly how we are. We know how we feel. But of course, it doesn't mean that you stand back from your feelings and emotions like a spectator, like watching a sports playing, but you are part of it. You are experiencing your feelings and emotions. You don't ignore what you're feeling. You accept what you're feeling, happy or sad, and you are mindful of them. You're observing them. You are not ignoring them. And the third is to be mindful of our thoughts. So this is even more abstract, and this is more difficult. Emotion you can sometimes tell. When you're angry, you can tell. When you're happy, you can tell. But sometimes the thoughts, 妄想, 妄读, those false, wandering thoughts, sometimes you don't detect. Actually, most of the times we don't detect our thoughts. So that's another way of trying to focus our energy. Integrating ourselves is to even be mindful of our thoughts. Right? Our mind wanders very easily, and usually in an unconcentrated, uncollected state. Therefore, for this reason that we practice mindful of our thoughts. So when we practice mindfulness, it's not just sitting at home, but it can be practiced on outside. For example, when we practice mindfulness, when we're in a group discussion at work, and our presence is required, we need to be part of that meeting. And even though it's not your turn to speak, but if you practice mindfulness, you are still very focused on the discussion, as opposed to just sitting there chanting Amida, Amida, and then people are just talking, but you are not part of the group. You're not part of the discussion. Then you're not practicing mindfulness, because you are required to be part of the meeting at work. You are required to participate and to contribute your ideas. But you're just sitting there and you just Amida, you just doze away. Then that is not mindfulness. Right? You have to be part of the discussion. Or if you're just sitting there, people are talking, and then your boss faces you and says, "What do you think about what has been proposed?" And then you say, what? Can you please repeat that? Then we have just lost our mindfulness. Right? When we are engaged in a conversation, whatever people are talking about, we are engaged in the conversation, then we are practicing mindfulness. So we shouldn't limit our mindfulness practice to just sitting in meditation, but apply it at work. Apply it when we talk to people. When people share with us their concern, we listen attentively and try to see if we can help them to offer a solution. Perhaps they have the solution already, they have choices, but they don't know what to pick for a solution. And because they are bothered by their own afflictions, their 烦恼, the worries, the anxieties, that they cannot see things clearly. But when we listen to them, we listen attentively, we help, and we hope that we can help them to find a solution. So when we listen attentively, that is also a practice of mindfulness, right? Okay. And then there's that's horizontal integration and on the same level. Then there is also vertical integration. This vertical integration here is at this point it requires even more effort, because we're talking about going deep in our consciousness and expanding our experience of that transformation. And this is a crucial point to be, because this makes an important transition from one plane to the other, from one world to the other, from the sensuous experience to mental and spiritual form. So we're going from 欲界 to 色界, dục giới, then sắc giới. So we are changing our experience. We're now elevating ourselves to the mental and spiritual form of experience. But of course, it's not easy, because we are held back by the 5 mental hindrances. We can use meditation to suppress them, but it's only temporary. It will require insight or wisdom, 智慧, 智慧. It requires insight in order to permanently eradicate those 5 mental hindrances. And what are those 5 mental hindrances? One is neurotic craving. I don't want to say desire, because desire is such a neutral word and it can lead to misleading, because say, okay, well, in order to get rid of this, I have no desire. That's not what it means here. Desire for sensuous experience through the 5 physical senses in a neurotic way, meaning that there is something about that you cannot live without. It's very, especially those connected with food and with sex. Those things are very enticing, and they could distract meditators' mental concentration, and therefore the meditator cannot really occupy himself with the object of the concentration. He will never be able to be absorbed in meditation. So when there is neurotic craving, meaning that you keep thinking about it, even though you don't need it, but you keep thinking about it. For example, think about food, think about spending money, think about enjoying. Those things you really don't need at the moment, but you keep thinking about it. Even if you tell yourself not to think about it, you continue to think about it. That's why it is a distraction. The second is anger or hatred, right? Feeling ill will and resentment. We know that with neurotic craving that it cannot lead to meditation. It is because it distracts the meditator. But what about the second hindrance? Why is it that meditation cannot exist with hatred? So why is this a hindrance? While you sit in meditation and you feel very relaxed, very positive, there is no way that hatred can arise. But should hatred arise, it would destroy your positivity. Therefore, the two are mutually exclusive. You cannot have both. You can either have one or the other. You can have meditative bliss or hatred, but you cannot have two at the same time. Therefore, if you have meditation, if you have meditative bliss, there is no way for hatred to rise, to come to existence. The third is sloth or torpor, sleepiness. You sit in meditation and you just doze off, right? You feel sleepy. That will destroy your meditation. That's why we sit with our back straight, to help with the flow of energy, qi, right? The flow of energy helps us with the regulation. And if you sit and you slouch, you're compressing your lungs. You're reducing your energy, or you're disturbing the movement of the energy. Therefore, you can feel tired over time, and therefore the body will feel sleepy. Or if you have eaten a lot and you try to meditate, you can feel sleepy too because your body is full of food. Why is it that right meditation cannot exist with sloth or torpor? Sleepiness. In other words, you cannot have both. You can either have one or the other. While with meditation, it's about awareness, alertness, right? Clarity in the mind. If your mind is drowsy, then it's not very clear. Therefore, it cannot exist together with meditation. You have to have the clarity of the mind in order to maintain your meditation. Therefore, there is no way for torpor to come into existence. If torpor comes into existence, you feel sluggish, you feel sleepy, then you're not maintaining your awareness. Therefore, the two cannot exist at the same time. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry, which is the opposite of torpor, where torpor is you feel very drowsy, you don't want to do anything. But with restlessness and worry, you're excited, you're always moving, you cannot be still. You're always trying to do something. Your inability to settle down, that's what disturbs your meditation, right? Continue fuzzing and bothering state of mind. Of course, it is easy to understand why it is not a part of meditation, because meditation is about calmness. But your mind is always disturbed, and of course, there's no way that meditation can come into existence. The fifth and the last obstruction is doubt. Doubt, this is indecision, unwillingness to make up one's mind, to commit oneself to the practice. It is lack of faith, lack of trust, and reluctance to acknowledge that there is a higher state of consciousness for human being to achieve. There's a state of enlightenment for us to achieve. Why is that right meditation cannot exist with doubt? Well, with doubt, you think about it, with doubt, there is no commitment. You're half in, you're half out, you're not committed. Therefore, you won't be able to integrate your energies. Your scatteredness is you're submerged in your scatteredness, right? There's no integration of energy. You're not one person, but you're being pulled in different directions by your different personalities, because you're doubt. You're not for sure that you want to commit to the practice of meditation, the practice of Buddhism. You say, well, maybe the worldly sensuous pleasures are still worth it. I want to pursue those. I don't want to commit my life for the rest of my life to study meditation, to practice meditation, to study Buddhism. So that doubt is going to be a hindrance to you. 障碍, 阻碍. It will become a hindrance to your practice, because you will not go very far without commitment. Even at work, right? Even in the world, if you want to be successful, you have to commit. You have to commit to your goals, to your intentions. And that commitment is important. It gives us the momentum to continue and to overcome hindrances. That's why overcoming doubt is extremely important. So these are the 5 mental hindrances that we must overcome in order to achieve meditation, to be successful in meditation. There is a simile, 譬喻. The mind is like water. When the water is contaminated by desire for sensuous experience, it's like colors that's been bright colors mixed in the water. It may look pretty, but that purity, that translucency of the water has been lost, right? It may be very fun to pursue sensuous pleasures, but you have destroyed your meditations and your development of consciousness to achieve your meditated mind. So you will fluctuate. If there's joy in the world, then you feel happy. There's not joy in the world, then you feel sad, so you fluctuate. So at times you may be very happy, but also most of the time you can be sad as well because the world fluctuates. And when the mind is contaminated by hatred, right, it's like boiling water, hissing and bubbling, so there's no settlement. Or when the mind is contaminated by sloth and torpor, sleepiness, the water is choked with thick growth of weeds, right? You cannot get through it, it's just so dense. Because there's no movement, you're stagnant. And the mind contaminated by restlessness and worry is like water which has been whipped up into waves by the winds and even by great storms, right? So there's no settling down, it's always moving very turbulently, in a turbulent manner. And when the mind is contaminated by doubt, by uncertainty, then the water is full of mud because you do not see clearly, you don't know where you're going. Sometimes you go this way, sometimes you go the other way, and there's no clear way to your destination. So those are the 5 hindrances that we should put in the effort to overcome if we want to be successful in meditation. So when we practice meditation, what should we focus on? We're saying we are concentrating our attention. So what is it that we should focus on? There are a few things that you can focus on to help you concentrate your energy. One is you can focus on your breath. 按住呼吸，按住佛號，按住hơi thở，按住chân hơi thở，按住chân Phật hiệu. When we focus on our breathing, it helps to calm the mind. It's a very versatile tool, very effective tool in controlling our wandering thoughts, in controlling our worries even. Right? When we worry, we tend to breathe very fast, uncontrollably at times. But if we can stop and focus on the breathing, automatically all the vital signs, everything in our body starts to work in synchronization, and they all work in a single order. That helps to calm the body and mind. Or you can focus on mantra, like 咒语、chú ngữ, or you can be mindful of Amida, right? The name Amida. You can focus on the mantra, right? Or you can also concentrate on like a disc appear. Imagine you have a disc and a bright color that you can focus on, a physical object. In some cases, people even have a human bone to concentrate on, maybe to remind them of impermanence. So even a bone of an arm or even a skull, of a human skull on the table, and they focus on that to remind them of impermanence. No, that's another way. Another way is to focus on the virtues of generosity, right? 慈悲, 德悲, and 布施, bodhi. You can focus on those virtues, giving, generosity. Or you can even concentrate on the flame of a lamp or a candle, the flickering. You're just focusing on it. Or you can also have a mental image of a picture of a Buddha or a great Bodhisattva, right? 佛像, Phật tượng, Hành Phật. Those things you can also focus on to concentrate your energy. Or you can even combine those indirect methods to help raise the level of consciousness. So there are different ways to get there. We have indirect way, and we have the direct way. And of course, in between there are hindrances, the 5 hindrances. We should overcome them. We should put in the effort to maintain this clarity, right? This mental clarity, this mental vigor to help us to overcome torpor, sleepiness, and to calm the mind down, and not to be thinking and not to have ourselves filled with worries and anxieties. when we integrate our conscious mind and our subconsciousness, we are doing this vertical integration. We're going deeper and our energies are more integrated. And when our energies are integrated, they're unified, it becomes a very strong flow. Imagine you have waters, the streams, rivers, when they come together and they have this, the streams that come together to waterfalls, right? And the waterfalls becomes very strong and very powerful. And when we ride that current, it helps us to get to our destination, right? If we are flowing very slowly and we get stuck, we get stuck. But if we're on this raft and it's flowing very high speed current, like a raft, you're on very high speed current, you can easily overcome your obstruction. Okay, so the first stage is, in Buddhism, there are 3 stages. We just talked about concentration, concentrating our energies, focusing our attention. Now we talk about absorption, right? We just talked about 正念, 真念. Now we'll talk about absorption, 正定, 真定. So that's the next level. Once we have this focus of energy, now the next is absorption. Absorption is the second level. Now the purified, integrated conscious mind is integrated with the superconsciousness. Now we're tapped into our superconsciousness. And it's purely spiritual. It represents the unification of the mind on higher and even higher levels of consciousness and being. The Buddha gave an example of the 4 levels of jhana. In this Lohika Sutta, the Buddha gave an example of the 4 jhana. The first jhana that he said was like, it leads to a very, this rapture, 喜乐, right? 喜乐. This rapture and pleasure withdrawn from the sensuous pleasure. He gave an example, the Buddha gave an example, it's like bath powder. And you mix it water into you roll into a ball. And all the water is absorbed in that ball and there's nothing left remaining dripping. So that's how it is when you integrate that, everything comes into one, in one entity. So there's no part of one's being, physical or mental, that's left unsaturated, and yet there's nothing left over. All of our energies, the first level, all of our energies are unified, right? That's the first level. And there's no imbalance. It's all calm and steady, stable, firm. It's naturally concentrated. So that's Sotian, right? That's the first, that's Chutan. That's the first jhana. The second jhana, Yitian, is like being in the lake with spring water swelling up from within. A lot of inspiration. We feel inspired to pursue, right? We don't feel slugging, this poor sleepiness, but we feel very inspired, invigorated to pursue our goal. Right? There's called something. There's something of the higher spiritual realm, and that's filled with aspiration. We're filled with inspiration to achieve our goal. Right? There's no part of the lake unpervaded by the cool waters. This very body with the rapture and pleasure born of composure. The third jhana, Damti or Santan, is like being in the lotus pond, where the lotuses are completely submerged in water. In other words, there isn't any part of a body that is not filled with rapture, happiness, and inspiration. And then the fourth jhana, Thutian, Sutan, where the Buddha gave a simile where a person sitting with a white cloth all cover him completely, meaning that he is completely full of bright awareness. He is pure, recovered from head to foot with a white cloth. nothing of his entire body pervaded by pure, bright awareness. So in this example, having washed himself clean, he comes out, he wraps his whole body with white cloth in sparkling white, clean, new sheet, and that's completely covering him, and that's how he is. In the state of fourth jhana, you are filled with brightness, awareness. Right? Those are the four similes that the Buddha gave to try to help us understand the state of those four jhanas. Okay? Ultimately, Buddhism, you will have to, when you practice meditation, it needs to lead to insight, wisdom, 智慧, trí tuệ. So what is insight? Insight, when we have wisdom, what does it mean? It means that we have clear vision, clear perception of the true nature of things. We see things as they are, they really are. Right? This direct perception of reality is what we're trying to achieve in practicing meditation to get to wisdom. So meditation, at this point, this meditation, when we practice meditation and we have wisdom, we uncover our wisdom, that is meditation at its height. And that's what insight really is. And it helps us to not be disturbed, but to see things very clearly. And this, what does it mean when we see things very clearly? Well, what that means is that we're not going to do anything that we're going to regret. We do everything with purpose. Right? We do everything that will not cause harm to ourselves, that will pull us back into the cycle of life and death. When we see things clearly, we don't do things that will pull us back into suffering. Perception is twofold, two characteristics to it. One is insight into the conditioned. Condition here you can say 缘生, right? 缘生, 缘生. You can say that. And also, and the second characteristics is insight into the unconditioned. Let's go into that one to see what it means. Insight into conditions has three aspects. When we see things and we can see these, when we see the world and we can see these three things, then we have insight into the conditioned. What are those three things? One is, the first is that we see the very nature of things, and that the nature of things cannot give permanent and lasting satisfaction. There will be dissatisfaction at the end of the road. The second that we see with insight into the conditioned is that things are impermanent. Okay? 无常, 不ถู. In other words, when we see that we don't have this perception that things last forever, to either be complacent and not to pursue, or to be uncaring. Oh, things last forever. Things last forever. I don't need to care about it. So when we have things, we take them for granted. With our family, our relationship, our friends, if we take things for granted, that means that we are seeing permanence of things that will always be there. So I don't need to pay attention to it, and I can take advantage of it, and things will always be there when I need it. Well, that is the wrong perception. If we want to preserve it, we have to put in the effort, the caring to preserve it. If we want our relationships to work, we have to put in the caring and the efforts to care for that relationship and not take advantage of it, right? We cannot possess any of them forever. Therefore, we don't take advantage of things. Or even with spiritual community, we value those who come to create a spiritual community. And so we put in the effort to try to preserve, to try to create the conditions for others to learn. So we don't take advantage of the spiritual community, but we come and to support, to have presence, to create this spiritual community. Because we know that if everybody leaves, then there is no spiritual community. So knowing that things don't last forever, we put in the right efforts to maintain what it is that we need. Third characteristic of this unconditioned insight into the unconditioned is that there's no self, 无我, 不我, that it does not possess permanent ultimate reality. There is no unchanging self in everything. When we see reality and we see those three things, that is insight into the conditioned. When we have insight, so again, insight into conditioned, we see things we see dissatisfaction, we see impermanence, and we see no self in the things of nature. The second is insight into unconditioned. What does this mean? The unconditioned here is when we transform our consciousness into wisdom. 转世成智, right? chuyển thức thành trí. We transform our consciousness into wisdom. The first of which is called knowledge of totality of things. And this is not in their particularly, but in and through their ultimate depths and spiritual essence. In other words, we understand the makeup of things, the totality of the universe. The second wisdom is the knowledge of all things, conditioned and unconditioned, without the slightest trace of subjective distortion. There's no bias, right? There's no prejudice, there's no clouding, there's clarity in what we see. And we see, and we reflect it just like the mirror truthfully reflecting reality. It's not distorted. If you look pretty, it shows you a pretty of yourself. If you have on a not too pretty of makeup, then it will reflect that too. So when we look at things without subjectivity, without prejudice, we see things more clearly. And sometimes that's very important. We want to be subjective so that it helps to make decisions. If you're biased, then you will not get the most out of your experience. The third wisdom is absolute sameness and identity, one reality, one sunyata. And the fourth knowledge or wisdom is the knowledge of things in the difference. So this one is in the sameness, and this one is in the difference. So in other words, when we have wisdom, doesn't mean that when we have meditation and we see things the same, it doesn't mean that we don't recognize the difference. Or when we recognize the difference, it doesn't mean we don't recognize the same. So like we talked about last time, right? Unity and differentiation, we can see both. And that gives us subjectivity, and that gives us insight because we can see the good and the bad, the same as the different, but we don't get disturbed by what we see. The absolute unity does not wipe out the absolute difference. Right? There is no one-sidedness. We see things in their absolute unity, and we also see things in their absolute multiplicity, their uniqueness. So when they're unique, we recognize that their uniqueness. When they're different, we recognize that they're different. In other words, when we have wisdom, Buddhist wisdom, doesn't mean that we don't see, that we stop thinking. And finally, the fifth knowledge is the knowledge of what is to be done for the welfare of all living beings. So those are the five wisdoms and knowledges. So how is wisdom developed from jhana? Well, we talked about jhana, but how is wisdom developed? Let's take a look at that. So we practice jhana And there is a misconception that when you're in the deeper in jhana that you go, you stop thinking. Well, that's not going to help you with wisdom, and that's not the purpose of Buddhist meditation. It's not to subside all thinking, but to help us to gain wisdom. So how does that work between jhana, chanting, between meditation and wisdom? Or when it is said that when we sit meditation and we stop our thinking, we should not take that literally. It's not what it means. That's not the purpose of meditation. But what happens is that we soak ourselves in this four jhana, this jhanic experience, and we allow the subtle mental activity with regard to the path of nirvana to rise. The difference now is that we have control of the thought. Before we practice meditation, our thoughts are in control, right? We have our wandering thoughts, 妄想, 妄tưởng. They go all over the place. But now we have control when we use specific thoughts to help us to uncover our wisdom. So that's the difference now, that we use our thoughts to help us to see things clearly. So technically, you come back to the first jhana with that thinking, well, with that mental activity. And behind all that is the saturated influence of those jhanas, right? So you come down in a sense and you've gone on. So you come down, but you also gone on. One is you settle the mind, you practice meditation to settle the mind. You don't stop there. Then from there you pick specific things, if you will. You can utilize your thoughts to help you see the word, 观察, right? You see, 观察, you see the word, not just to suppress our thinking. The other method is to remain in this non-discursive, non-reasoning state. Discursive means like 妄想, wandering false thoughts, jumping from thought to thought. That's discursive. But then you just wait for even higher transcendental experience to come. You just sit there and you wait. He said that's another method. Because you have been saturated in the higher experience, spiritual experience, that you deliberately allow subtle mental activities to arise. And that is what's necessary for the purpose of developing wisdom. So in other words, you don't cause rise to thinking for nothing. You cause rise to thinking with the purpose of developing wisdom, uncovering wisdom. In other words, you don't lose yourself in this submersion of jhana, meditative bliss. Meditative bliss, meditation, with the mind calm, you just don't get stuck there. You lost the control. That's not what it means. But you are in a state where you are ready for the next step to occur. But there's some people who think that you can develop prajna, order, right, or wisdom, without ever going through jhana, by sheer force of intellectual penetration, backed up by very strict and regular life. So there are a group of people who think that you can achieve enlightenment with wisdom without going through jhana. So this is very dry insight, has not been saturated in the moisture, as it were, of high jhanic experience. Great. So there is a great deal of discussion whether that is the way or not. But of course, I think there are multiple ways of getting there. Perhaps this group of people think you don't need jhana to get to enlightenment. Other groups say you need to have jhana in order to get to enlightenment. For us, I think it's best to follow the standard way, right? The traditional way is to go through the proper training. Unless you have special abilities, and it's not said here, it's not included in here. But if we are regular people, and we should follow the regular path, and that is to go through jhanas first, right? Because through going through jhana, that we are more conducive to wisdom development. We are more conducive to a higher state of consciousness, because we're modifying ourselves. We're getting
our body and mind, particularly our body, ready for the acceptance of the higher level of consciousness. If we don't do the preliminary work, we don't do the preparation, then when we have flashes of insight, you won't be able to catch them. Where you see things, you see impermanence, but you don't recognize. That's what it means. You see death. You go to a funeral, but then you don't recognize impermanence. You don't recognize no self. But if we have been absorbed in meditation, it helps us to develop wisdom, to grow wisdom. This is a traditional way of getting there, right? Jhana experiences refine the whole being, and the insight is able to develop. From there, it can develop, and from there can deliberately spark off the development of wisdom. So before we practice meditation, our thoughts are all over the place, and we don't recognize reality, true reality. We practice meditation, our mind is calming down. We can see things more clearly. And we don't stop there, but we use our thoughts, our thinking, our contemplation, guansa. We use our contemplation to help us to develop wisdom. Right? So that's the purpose of practicing meditation, is to uncover wisdom. And sometimes in this process, as we change, there could be side effects. For example, there's a side effect, and not everybody goes through this, but it is possible that we can ourselves go through this. And when we change and we unify our personalities, we are going through this, you can say it's very positive change, but on the outside, people might not understand it and we see us differently. And they may say, what has happened to you? You are now a completely different. And they may not understand that. For example, an example here is when we have integrated our energies and we have become a different person because we inhibit certain personalities. We don't get angry anymore. We don't pursue sensuous pleasures anymore. We are in a way inhibiting our certain personalities. And we maybe become more self-reflecting. We more become observant of our inner mental activity, and this will result in a personality change. And in some cases, you may be incapable of any response. You may appear to be wooden, even stupid, because you're not very responsive. And some people go through this phase of their spiritual life as they practice, and they may appear very stupid to others because they're not being very reactive. This is because they are inhibiting all their mechanical reactive processes. Their real spontaneity has not yet developed, meaning that wisdom has not yet developed. They're going through this phase, and their wisdom has not yet developed, and so they are going through this awkward transition, this awkward state of being. And they may find themselves quite odd and strange and even stupid at times, because they're no longer quick, they're not as smart as they used to be, or as that's how people perceive them. And because before them, it was all reaction, emotional reaction. So they were very quick in shooting back with a sarcastic response or a retort. Right before, they did not check their emotions and they would just act emotionally. But now, in the process of practicing meditation and mindfulness, they have become more conscious and they've begun to slow down. And therefore, they're being more careful with their thought, their speech, their actions. But people don't see the transition and they misunderstand that they're being slow and stupid, unfortunately. So that's what's happening here. So when people go through this stupid phase, it is a bit difficult for their friends to understand what is happening. But it is a genuine positive thing to go through. And sometimes this is quite necessary. We have to go through that to slow ourselves down in order to get to where we want. Just like you're driving on a freeway, 70 miles an hour, and if you want to exit, you have to slow down, right? You can't just make a turn right away at 70 miles an hour, that speed. You're going to flip over, you're going to hurt yourself. So people are going through that transition, and when people observe it, they don't understand what is it that's happening in their minds. So it could last for a few days, even a few years, and people think that, you know, you're really stupid because your mind doesn't work like in the sort of way that you used to. People may think. They will say, what's the matter with you? You used to be so great. You used to be so fun, so active. So what has happened to you? Because they don't see the inner transitions, right? The inner transformation that this person is going through. And so they look like a block of wood, and for them and this is quite good. It's not something to be unhappy about. Now you may seem like that to people, though you're quite happy yourself. You're happy that transition. You know you're making progress. You know you're making that transitions and you're moving towards the goal. So you feel happy about it. But people looking at you, they may not appreciate that, and they don't understand what is it that's going on. And you try to carry on with your normal life, but they don't see that. You may go into a party, you may drink a few drinks, eat some food, but you're not very talkative. You're not very social with other people because you're now more self-absorbed, and people don't see that. But you can see that within yourself, and if you have convictions, commitment to the practice, you feel at ease. People may not understand it, but you are quite happy of being yourself, quite happy that, and quite aware that you are making that transition. So there is nothing wrong that we should feel. We shouldn't feel ashamed or unhappy, because that's part of the transition, right? So when we practice meditation, we're going through this phase from moving away from the control of our sensuous pleasure and try to absorb our energies, absorbed in meditation, be mindful. And we're going through this transition. We are inhibiting certain personalities that we don't want to surface. And that transition can make us feel awkward at times, and people may see that. And that's okay, because we are going through that transition. And once we get to the other side, we will realize for ourselves that it is quite a beautiful thing to go through. And we should understand that the purpose of meditation is not to just get stuck in a state of meditative bliss or a state of no thoughts, but to now use the thoughts, under our control to cause rise to wisdom, to develop wisdom, right? So again, the purpose of meditation is to make our mind more conducive to the development of wisdom, to that growth. Okay? All right. Okay, we will pick up this the Amida Sutra next time, but I hope you appreciate the discussion today, why jhana, meditation, is necessary, and the process from practicing Buddhism, practicing meditation, to the goal of achieving enlightenment by developing wisdom. Right? Okay, let's do merit dedication. All right, if you could please join your palms together, we recite. May the merits and virtues accrue today adorn the Buddha Pure Lands, repay 4 types of kindness above, and aid those suffering in the past below. May those who see and hear of this bring forth the resolve for the Bodhi mind. When this retribution body is complete, together we shall meet in the land of ultimate bliss. If you could please rise and we bow to the Buddha 3 times to show our respect. First bow. Second bow. And third bow. 阿弥陀佛。